Alright guys, you're welcome back to this particular video. In this particular video, we'll be talking about how to create a simple box with CSS. We'll be talking about commenting on CSS, and we'll be talking about backgrounds, right? So let's just get started. So the first thing I'm going to do in our usual fashion is to go over to our VS Code here and create a new file. And in this new file, let me just call it number 2. I'll just call it box.html as usual, HTML. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is create my DOC. So when I create my DOC, you see it over here, and I'm going to create box. I'm going to click on save to actually save that. Then once I do that, the next thing, okay, let's use internal CSS for now, right? I'll create style. So this is where our CSS will live. So I'll create a div. Remember this particular tag called div tag. So in this case, that's what we'll be using, right? So I'll create a class. I'll give it a class. Remember to the class in the last video, and I'll call this particular class box because I can give it any name. Then I'll come over here and I'll say box because that's the name of the class that I gave it. I'll give it a width. So width is more or less like a CSS property, right? So and determine the width of an element. So this particular box is if you guys can remember, I said these are non-semantic elements, which simply means that they are flexible and we can use them to create anything that we like. So we'll give it a width. So in CSS, basically we have like two major units that we use. We have pixels and we have percentage, right? So in this case, I'll be using pixels. So I'll say 100 px. So px is like the units, right? To measure it, units is like centimeters, meters, kilometers, stuff like that. So in this case, we are using px, which simply means pixels, right? So I can say 100 pixels, but let me give it something quite bigger. Let's say 700 px. Then I could give this a height too as well. Okay, do you know what? Let's make it like a square box instead of rectangle. So let's give it 300, right? So if I do this, the box will still not like have a color because there is no color to it. So I'll give this box a background. So background is another CSS property. So background have so many things you can see. VS Code have given me so many lists of other properties of background. We have background color, background image, background position, background repeat, background size, background clip, and so on and so forth. But let me just give it color. I just want background color, right? So I give it background color, and I can give it any color of my choice. So let me give it like red, for example, and I will save this. So if I save this now, if I go back to my document here, I will see box where I save it inside of my system, and I'll right click and say open with Google Chrome. So the moment I do it here, we see what I've done, which is this particular simple red box. So for example now, if I increase the width to say that's 700 right now, you will see that the box will actually increase in width, and you can adjust the width and the size. Now this now looks more or less like a rectangular box, sort of a square box, right? So simply that's how you create a simple shape in CSS. For example now, in like real website that you guys are seeing, in most cases they use this stuff as, let's say, like the nav bar now, right? The navigation that you see on most websites, whereby the width can be like 100%, and the box now, the height of the box can be like, let's say like 70, and let's say we want to give it a color, let's say like a gray color. Let me use this particular color called F5, right? If I save this and refresh this now, you could see I have something. Okay, let's make it a little bit darker. Let's make it darker so you see it very well. All right, something like this is cool. So you could see that I have something that looks like a nav bar, which simply means I just created that using a box, right? So let's even increase the height to like, let's say 650 px, for example. Then this looks more or less like a full home page, right? So that's how you create a simple box instead of CSS. Now, before I proceed, the next thing I would love to talk about is commenting on CSS. If you guys can remember, in HTML, we use this control or command / to create and drop our comment here. So but in CSS, you can also do the same thing as well. For example, now if I select all of this and I want to comment it, I will say control and /, which is a short command, or command / which is a short command in VS Code that just do the any areas I select as a comment for me. But let me explain this. So if you want to comment in CSS, you can just add / asterisk, right? And also to open the comment and close the comment at asterisk /. So of course, you know the job of comments. Comment allow us to leave a simple note without each running. For example, now I can come over here and create my comment and say this, and leave a simple note. This is me trying to leave a note inside a note inside of my code, right? I could just drop that stuff there. This is me trying to leave a note inside of my code, which is quite simple. Just leaving this piece of note there, and it's not run. I can also use comment as well to undo a certain code, not for it not to run, so that I will not delete it as well. So that's the same thing. So that being said, we've also tweeted comment. So that being said, the next thing I would also love to shoot in this particular video is background on its own. Like, I want us to go in depth and treat background. Now, one of the cool thing about background is that, as you can see, this color determines the color of this particular box that we created. So one of the cool thing about background is that it has a lot of stuff inside of it, right? So if I want an image as my background, right, just something similar with what we did with CSS, with HTML, that's the same thing that we're going to do. For example, now if I write stuff here, let's say I write a simple, let me use paragraph that says this. Let's say this is a simple text, and I save this and I go back and I refresh. I'm going to say this is a simple text, but I want the background to be an image, right? So one of the first things I would love to do is go and look for any image file I want to use as my background. I remember that when we are treating HTML, right, we made use of some images. So let's look for images. So this is the image here. So let me just copy this image. So you just look for any image inside of your system. Actually, I just look for any image of my choice. So I'll paste this image here. This image is called front end on JPG. So that's the image here. So just look for any image, bring inside of your CSS folder that you've created. That's the same thing I did here. So if I want to make this an image now, a background image, I'll go over here. CSS also have this stuff called background image. You could see that, right? So if you want to add an image as our background, so once you type the property background image, the value would be URL. And the URL will contain like the file location. We could have like a single quote here. The URL will contain like the file location of that particular image. In other words, what is the URL of that particular image I would want to add? Now, I normally love to start with period sign and / and I will see that image here called frontend.jpg. Then I can save it. Then if I save it there, I can go back, right, and I will do something like this. Now you could see this is like super amazing. The image is quite big, and you could see that it is definitely trying to like repeat itself and so on and so forth, right? Because the image is big but not big enough to cover the entire screen, so it's trying to repeat itself. So there's another property of CSS called background repeat. So background repeat has several values. You can see the several values. We have no repeat, we have repeat Y, we have repeat X. It depends on what you're doing. If the image is small, you can make it just repeat only horizontally, or make it repeat vertically, which is repeat X and repeat Y. But if you don't want it to repeat at all, you can add background no repeat. So I'll just look for no repeats here, and once I click on save and I go back and refresh, now you see it will not repeat itself. You could see that this stuff is still showing at that particular edge without it repeating itself. So let's say I want this image to force itself to cover the entire box. So one of that properties I could add is what we call the background size, right? So there's another property called background size. So what background size does is that we have auto, we have contain, and we have cover, right? I love to use cover a lot because it helps me to cover stuff. If I use auto, let's see what auto will give us. You see, auto will not basically change anything, right? But if I use cover, okay, let's use contain before we use cover. If we use contain and refresh, contain 2 will not really change anything because it's trying to contain the box. So that is why I always love to use what? Cover. So cover is good because it's going to like force it to contain the entire box, and so on and so forth, right? Which is really, really good. So there's another background properties again I would also love to choose, which is called the background position. So the background position determines, okay, what part of the image is going to show first, why it covers the entire box, right? So in this case, we'll say background position, and we could use points, but we could say top, bottom, center, and so on and so forth. For example, now if we say bottom and we click on save, right, and refresh, you see that the bottom part of the image is going to show first before any other part of that particular image. If we say top as well, you're going to realize that the top part of the image is going to show first before any other part of the image. If we say left, let's use left as well, you'll notice that the left part of the image is going to show first. But one of the parts I love to use is center, right? So center basically does centralize the background image to the center part of the whole thing here, which is really, really cool. So this is me using center. Of course, you could see that the text that we wrote is still there because that particular side is dark. That's why you cannot read the text, right? So of course we can change text color. So we'll still get to text, but one of the ways you change text color is on that property called color. And okay, we've did the color before, so we can just give this white. Hash FFF is of course white. Then once we do that is to change the text color so we can see that particular color. Now still treating background, right? Aside background position being center, we could also use like and you could use several positions, right? You could use like, let's say like 40px blah blah blah, just type something, right? You could see that it will still work one way or the other, and you see it's determining the position of that particular background. So the first one is going, okay, let's increase this one by 400 now. Let's see. The first figure, let's refresh. So the first figure is left, while the second figure is top, right? So if I want it to go left and top, this particular figure, it will help me adjust my background, right? But of course I want it to be center. I don't want to show you guys that you can also include like numbers or units to determine the position of that particular background, right? So there's another amazing thing that will allow us to create something that looks more or less like a parallax effect that I love to use sometimes in some of my work. I call that the background fix. But before we're going to observe that, let's create another div. So I'm going to create another div, right? And I will give it a class. And the name of this class, let us call it content. So let's assume that there's a lot of content here. Or I don't even need to create a div. Let me just create a paragraph tag. So VS Code has this thing that if you just type lorem and hit enter, it will create like demo text for us, right? So these are several demo texts that it has created for us. I want to be able to scroll. So you see like several demo texts. So let's just try to like repeat this several times. I'm just like Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V so many times. So I want like a lot of text. All right, perfect. So that I can actually scroll. See, I can scroll now, right? So I can actually scroll. Now, once I have stuff like this done, I want to show you something else. And what I want to show you is background size. So there's another CSS property called background size I'd also love to use. It's called background size. And with this particular background size, not background size, sorry, background attachment. We'll create background size. I want to choose background attachment. So background attachment. So background attachment, you can have like fixed. So fixed is one thing that gives us this parallax effect in such a way that if we refresh this now, if we start scrolling, it will just look as if the image is static while we are scrolling. Observe this particular effect, right? This is like super dope, and this is like really cool, right? You could observe that, and this is amazing, right? Just make it feel as if the image is inside a particular window and you are basically revealing it. But if you comment this out without that background attachment fixed, and we'll do this, the image and everything will scroll at once, right? So that is us treating box, treating backgrounds, different colors, and also treating treating commenting as well. But one other thing I want to show you guys is linear gradient. What's if your background wanted to be linear gradient? So let me just comment this particular line out. So if I comment a background image out, that particular image will go off. We have our text. So instead of us having this particular normal background color, right, we could have something called linear gradient. And the good thing about linear gradient is that you can even apply your background using just background like this, without you saying background color and so on and so forth. And if you apply it right here using just this particular keyboard, it's like a short, okay, let me say it's like a master property for all other background properties, right? So if you just say background, you can use background fix for your background color and everything. Well, for example, if I come here and say red, this particular background, let me comment this one out. Without saying background color, just say background red, it will automatically give you the color called red for me, right? And even if I put the image there, without saying background image, it will automatically apply background image to it and give me that particular stuff, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. So what I'm trying to say is that background as a keyword can also apply for both background repeat size and stuff like that. It's like a shortcut. Instead of you say background position, background size, you can also say just background and everything will work perfectly fine. Now the next thing I want to talk about is linear gradients. So apply gradients, right? So there's something called linear gradients. This will allow us to apply gradients. So the first one is the direction of the gradient. I can say to left. Now let's say to left, I'll say comma, I'll give it my first color of the gradient, red, and my second color, let's give it green. So I'm just giving it any color, green. Then if I go back and I refresh this, you're going to see the gradient, right? So we are starting from green to red. So if you say to left, you can change it to right as well, to R-I-G-H-T, RIGH. Okay, that's how you spell right. To right as well, and refresh. See, it will change the direction, right? So this is how you apply gradient actually. And apart from you saying to left or to right, you can also attach degree. I love to use degree a lot. You can say 90 DEG. So DEG is a unit that stands for degree. That is 90 degrees, right? And if I do this, this is 90 degree. So if I change this to, like, let's say 180 degree, for example. So let's see what we have. So it will change vertically like this. This is 180 degree. And if you want it to be diagonal in shape, that should be like 45 degree. So let's change this to 45 degree. So 45 degree will give us something. Oops, I wrote G5. 45 degree will give us something like diagonal in shape, right? So and so on and so forth, right? So we have to top left to even the numbers too. There's also where you can use like normal, say to top left and so on and so forth. Then it will give you to bottom right, and so it will give you this same diagonal shape as well. So this is one way you apply linear gradient. So linear gradient is not the only color there is. So there are other gradients as well. Let me just Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V this and comment the first one. There are other gradients apart from linear gradients, like the radial gradient. So radial gradient is something like this. Then okay, let's just leave it. Let's move the degree here. Radial gradient is one that looks like circular, right? Circular stuff. Aha. So you can see so many people using this stuff very well in such a way that, let's say this green area now could be like a very like ash, for example, can be like gray. Let's pick this color, this DF color, and say hashtag DF. This is gray, and this one now could be white, triple F, right? It gives us white color, and we can now have something like this. You could say, okay, let's make this one a little bit darker, so you can observe what I just did now. All right, let me drag this, make it darker a bit. Okay, this is cool. Let's save this. Let's refresh. All right, you could see the white in between. In fact, let me make it more darker. Drag it down. If you're wondering the way I'm bringing out that particular this color picker, just put your mouse on top of it and just go on top and drag it down. The color picker will appear is by default on VS Code. So if you refresh this, you could see that the middle is white and the surrounding area is black. It's because of it is radial gradient. So apart from radial gradient as well, we also have what we call the conic gradient. So the conic gradient more or less like 3 colors. So you can let's use obvious colors like red, green. Let me use green and anything. Okay, let me use yellow as the third one, right? So conic gradient is another one. So with the conic gradient, you can have this stuff that looks more or less like a cone, right? So you can use that to create several kind of gradient. But one of the most widely used ones are the, let me comment this out, and leave this. One of the most widely used ones are the linear gradients, right? So basically, guys, this is how you play with creating a box. This is how you play with creating play with backgrounds, applying gradients and normal background color to any elements that you have using CSS. Thank you for watching this particular video, and don't forget, if you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and help me go to the comment section and drop and leave a comment about if you enjoyed this particular video, so that YouTube gets to refer the video to more people that are looking to learn CSS, right? So thank you guys, see you in the next videos.